Did you, since, so many troops are being pulled out of Vietnam, did you have to specifically request to go to Vietnam?
No, oh no, believe me, I wanted to go to Vietnam. I wanted to go to Vietnam, and when I graduated, yeah, I tried very hard in school, to get decent grades. When we're going to aviation school, so many people. So you started with 30 people, and we ended up with 15 people at the end of because if you fail a test, they would put you back on a group of people who were like a week before our group. But if you failed twice, you were out. And once you were out, you had no choice. I mean, they guarantee you schooling, but if you failed, they can put you, they can throw you in the infantry, they can make you a cook, they can put you in whatever they want. So you had no options. So if you, in myself, I tried very hard, because I wanted to be with helicopters so bad that that I really tried hard. Sometimes when my buddies were out there, in the weakest, drinking beer and going to the non-commissioned officers club, I was studying. So I tried very hard. So anyway, once we finished the course, we graduated. I thought I was gonna be in first place, and because I was doing well, I was doing very well. But anyway, somebody beat me to it by just a few points, so but I came in second place in the class. Okay, so now, man, so after that, we were just kind of just, once we finished school, we had to wait for our orders. Almost everybody in aviation was going to Vietnam, even at the time. This is late 1971. So aviation was still very strong in Vietnam because they were sending, and of course the school for pilots was also in Fort Rucker, Alabama. I know they had a place in Texas, but Fort Rucker was they were training a lot of pilots, young pilots, and people were going to Vietnam. So anyway, so we waited for our orders. We had KP doing just cleanup duties and whatever. I couldn't wait to get my orders. I wanted to go to Vietnam. So then we got the orders, and I could see then there was 15 names in. And they said, okay, orders came in. The orders came in, so they had a board with 50 names, and they showed the 50 names, and I could see Vietnam. Now there were a couple of who were 17 years old. So by that time they were not sending 17-year-olds to Vietnam, because I guess they figured they were just too young, and too many were dying at 17. So and so they were got orders to go to Germany. Well, my name was, Trevino. It was kind of at the bottom, and I showed, like, I was registering in Fort Rocker. I go Fort Rocker. I mean, it was like it was a shocking to me, like, you got to be kidding. Everybody's going to Vietnam and Germany, and I had a very hard time on that. So they kept, so I just couldn't believe it. Here I try so hard, but that's the army for you. You just, they'll put you wherever they need you. Once you finish your school, they say, okay, we guarantee the school, but we can put you whatever we want afterwards. But anyway, that's another long story. And so anyway, so I had to stay in Fort Rocker for a number of months, which I was very upset, very discouraged. I was like, I was gonna miss the war. Well, all my buddies went, all my mates went to Vietnam. Here I was stuck in Fort Rocker, Alabama. Not even Korea, South Korea, or Germany, or anywhere else. So I felt cheated. They cheat me. But anyway, once I finally said, I accept it. I said, well, that's it. This is just the way it is. I got to make the best of it. But anyway, I finally, they call my name. They say, hey, they call you from the overseas office, and so I said, wow. So I ran over there. I ran, and then this lady, they had civilians working there, with their typewriters, and anyway, so she goes, okay, she gives me the orders. Okay, she said, you got orders to go to Vietnam. She goes, I went like, it was like, people are surprised. But I think I was 18 years old at the time, and I'm going like, she looked at me and she goes, I never seen anybody being happy when I tell them they're going to Vietnam, And but to me, I was miserable in Fort Rocker, and to me it was like, well, now I got the opportunity to go to Vietnam. So that was really like something that I really, I went through something. However, think about this, I ended up, because they kept me for those months in Fort Rocker. Once I went to Vietnam, I was the only one who ended up in dustoff. Okay, so maybe that I had to go. So maybe it's part of, I don't know, destiny, whatever you want to call it. But I had to go. So in order to end up in dustoff, if I would have arrived with all of my classmates, which I met some of them when I was in Vietnam, they were stationed in aviation units, helicopter units, but none of them ended up in dustoff, and I did. And dustoff was there was like, to be in dustoff, it was something very prestigious,
Well, let me ask you about that. I've talked to dustoff guys before, crew chiefs and medics and pilots. And I talked with one guy. He was a dustoff pilot, and then on a second tour, he was a Cobra pilot. But he said looking back, he much preferred the dustoff. And they all had their different reasons for, really being glad they served with the dustoff unit. Why was that important for you?
The only thing I can share is that that I'm very proud to having served with all these brave men, these pilots, young pilots, young medics, crew chiefs. I never flew with crew chiefs because there was only one crew chief, but I flew with a lot of medics. I met a lot of good medics. These guys did an incredible job. To deal with these wounds, they knew their job well. Yeah, they knew their job well. And these pilots, I tell you, they got on board. They were well trained. They didn't hesitate at all. They just went there, and at the time, I couldn't even figure out how these guys find these places, but they did. Of course, smoke grenades and radio communication and other things helped, but these guys, were able to find a spot. And they went down there. It was, man, they took those choppers, man, they maneuvered them, come down and just landed us there, and I never got to use a hoist, which was very dangerous because you'd be right above the trees. That one time we almost did, but I have to say that I'm very proud to have served with this dustoff. Yeah, and I would say of anything. I always wanted to be part of the military, the American military, and And if I had to do it all over again, it would be dustoff. That would be the place that I would want to be.
That's great.
First, I was stationed in Long Binh, okay, with the 57th Medical Detachment, dustoff. But by the time I got to Vietnam in July of 1972, this is when they were in the Eastern Offensive. You know, the Eastern Offensive had been going for a while, and this was still going on pretty hard. Most of all, the Arvins. You know, the Arvins were really. I mean, they were doing all the ground fighting. Okay, the Arvins were doing all the ground. And of course, we Americans, we were like supporting them, you know, with air support in every form, in every shape and form, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Let's go back to the beginning. When did you go into the Army?
I went to the Army in July 1971.
Were you drafted?
No, I joined.
Why? What motivated you to join?
You know, I tell you what, you know, the war had been going for a very long time by the time I went in the Army, you know, I mean, the anti-war was very strong, you know, everybody was against the war. I wanted to be a soldier since I was 10 years old. I mean, since I was a kid, you know, because I'm a product of, you know, the veterans of World War II, the Korean War. You know, I wanted to be a soldier. So I never got that out of my system, you know, and also, you know, of course, you know, my friend, and I was 12 years old when I became aware of the Vietnam War, you know, because you saw it on TV, and I says, wow, so I'm thinking, wow, that's so weird. I said, I was surprised, you know, we're in a war, you know, I'm seeing all these soldiers, Marines, you know, in helicopters and so on. And then it started like, you know, like in 65 and in 66 and so on. And then of course, you know, my friends, you know, I was like, let's say in 1968, I was 15 years old. And my friends, older brothers and cousins were being drafted and sent to Vietnam. Okay, some of them joined, some were drafted, you know, and they came back from Vietnam. You know, they told their stories, you know, and I was fascinated. You know, it's the more they told me about the hardship of the war, the more excited I became. I wanted to believe that we were there to do something. There was a reason to be there. You know, obviously by that time, you know, like, you know, the sentiment about you know, like we want to stop the communists. We were getting out. So you know, I wasn't going to fool myself to think, oh, we're going to be stopping communists, and you know, I mean, we were withdrawing the troops big time, and but you know, I in myself, I wanted to believe because I really wanted to be part of the Vietnam experience. Guys coming back with their great stories, you know, and I was just like, man, I wanted to be part of that. You know, as a young man, you know, so I was just young, you know, and so, and of course, and I had, you know, like I mean, so Vietnam was very much part of me from a very young age because I was, you know, because of the draft, you know, everybody had a connection with it because everybody had a son, a cousin, an uncle, a friend. Everybody was connected in one way or another with the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Because of the draft, you know, and I remember my best friend who also went to Vietnam before I did. Well, anyway, before we both went to Vietnam, his cousin, you know, Gary Johnson, he had been in a tour in Vietnam, and then he finished that tour, and then they sent him to Texas, and he didn't like where he was stationed, so he volunteered to go back to Vietnam. This is back in 1971, wow. And so anyway, you know, we went to say goodbye to him. He lived with his parents in Malibu. He was still in the Army, so he was visiting his parents before he went back to Vietnam. So we had to say goodbye to him. Nice guy, you know. Yeah, I think he was about 21. Anyway, so he went back to Vietnam, and so he went right into Vietnam when they had the, you know, lump sum, that Operation Lump Sum 719. Yeah. Well, anyway, he was back less than a month, and he was a door gunner. He was in that operation, and he got shot down, and the whole crew perished. And so there was my friend. He was my friend. He was, you know, he was already in the Army. I was not in the Army yet, but he was in the Army. He was stationed in Fort Rucker. You know, he was also in aviation training, you know, being for aircraft maintenance. But anyway, we went to see his mother, you know, when they got the news that her son, that was his aunt, you know, but like someone was killed. And it was very heartbreaking to see her, you know, to see her how she, I mean, she was devastated, you know. She was almost like kind of a zombie, you know. And because my cousin Dave, I mean my friend David, her nephew, she told him, please find out what happened to Gary. If you can find out anything what happened to Gary, please let me know. So that was an experience for me.
Hmm.
And this is before my time in Vietnam. I was still in high school at the time.
And
So anyway, uh,
what was his name? Gary?
Gary Lee Johnson. Yeah, he was killed in February 1971. So when I arrived to Vietnam uh, in Tan Son Nhut, okay, I arrived in Tan Son Nhut, and I had no idea what I was going to do. See, they don't tell you once you go to Vietnam. It's not like they say, okay, you're going to be doing this. No, you're going to Vietnam. Okay, your training was on the aircraft maintenance, helicopter maintenance, and you can end up anywhere where they have helicopters. In Vietnam, they still had a lot of helicopters throughout, up north, down on the Mekong Delta and the center. Helicopters were all over the place. So I said, well, I'm going to end up. I had no idea where I thought it was probably most likely I was going to be a door gunner, you know. And so I was in Camp Alpha. I don't know if you heard of Camp Alpha in Tan Son Nhut. That's where they process you. You have to wait. You arrive in Tan Son Nhut. They put you in Camp Alpha. You stay there for like 5, 6, 7 days and waiting for orders. You have no idea where you're going to be. And of course, my mind is going like, wow, it's like, this, I wonder where they're going to put me. I'm thinking door gun and all this, and I'm eager, and instead, when I'm there at night, at night in my bed, I could hear the bombings at a distance. That's the first thing you hear about there's a war going on, because you can hear the bombs at a distance,
Mm.
and so then the day came where they say, okay, we got your orders, and they said you're going to be assigned to dustoff. Now they didn't say I was going to be a crew chief. They just say you're going to be assigned to the 57th Medical Detachment dustoff, And I said, I didn't know that much about it. I never heard of the word dustoff. I didn't even know what that was.
Hmm.
I know that there was helicopters who evacuated people, but I never really put that much thought into it. And there were some guys who were stationed in Camp Alpha and said, you're going to dustoff? I said, man, I tell you what, that's one of the most dangerous jobs in Vietnam. They said, and you're going to see a lot of guts and blood. And I said, and I said, well, I was not that concerned about the danger, but I was concerned about the guts and blood, because like, I don't know how I could handle that part, But anyway, from the very beginning, they told me that's going to be, it's a great unit, but it's like, it's like, man, it's like, it's very dangerous, and I said, okay, well, that's what it is, I was, so then they put me on a bus, and a number of us, and we went to Long Binh. Okay, so, I was the only one. No, there were two of us who were going to the 57, two of us. And that's so we took this bus, they had chain link fence on the windows,
Right.
and they told me it was to keep, from somebody throwing a grenade into the bus, so.
Right.
So anyway, so we headed towards Long Binh. We arrived at Long Binh, huge base. It's got a city on its. So anyway, so I arrived at Long Binh. Long Binh, it was kind of on the higher part. And man, when I saw these helicopters, because now they had, I never knew that the Army had white helicopters, because they were always green with a cross, So
Yeah.
so when it was it was like an overcast day, and I saw all these white and green helicopters with red crosses, and they looked beat up. They looked like they had gone through a ringer, they were full of like sheet metal patches, and boy, I tell you, when I see the crew, like crew chiefs and medics, and they look worn out, because they had to go. Through the Eastern Offensive really took a toll on the dustoff units, because they were supporting the Arvins big time, and so they were, and but I was, when I looked at them, so these helicopters, and so that was very new for me, It's like, man, I never knew I was going to end up with dustoff, So so then I got briefed by the company commanders, the CEO, and I got briefed, and also by the first sergeant, and they told me, they says, okay, they explained to me what was dustoff all about,
Yeah.
And they told me, recently we lost a pilot, and he was a CW Robert Lewis Horst, that was his name, young pilot, 21-year-old pilot, married with a kid.
Were you aware when you arrived in Vietnam in July that that the Easter Offensive had been going? That were you aware?
Oh, very much so, very much so. Yeah, because I was in the army, so we knew that. We knew that there was, yeah, it was like it was a. I was very much aware of that. The Eastern Offensive was, it was like it was like the second Tet Offensive.
Right.
And people don't know how because the Tet Offensive, it becomes so ingrained because the American soldiers were so involved in that one that they don't really think much about the Eastern Offensive. But the Eastern Offensive was a huge operation, and we lost 14,000 American soldiers in 1968. That was the peak of the war, and the Arvins, they lost I think about 13,000, a little less than we did on the year. So combined together, about, let's say 27,000 or something like that. Well, in 1972, okay, the Arvins were doing all the ground fighting. Absolutely, they were doing, and there was some hard fighting. You got to even credit for that. Of course, they relied on our air power. Without our air power, the NVA and VCs, they were just too good at the war. And the leadership was superb. But anyway, in 1972, the Arvins lost 38,000 or more soldiers, twice as many, as they as 1968. So there was a lot of fighting. And as far as the air bombing, the American air bombing, it was the max. The B-52s. The B-52s were bombing not just North Vietnam, but South Vietnam. I hear the bombings. I witnessed the bombings when we were flying. We were flying on the mission. We would see like the B-52s on their carpet bombing, and it was quite a sight to see. I mean,
So were some of your operations in your first weeks with the 57th Medical Detachment, were they related then to the Easter Offensive? Some of the operations you were involved in?
Well, yeah. Well, see, well, yes, because when we went to Tay Ninh, because An was very much part of An was like north of Tay Ninh, and that whole, see, it had spread. Okay, it had, of course, it's not like the initial invasion, the initial NVA attack, but now has spread, and it's spread in different areas. There's fighting, lots of fighting around An Lac. There's fighting in the Mekong Delta. There's fighting in that like Tay Ninh area. There's west of Vung Tau. There were just a number of areas that there was fighting. So it was like a massive battles, but there was just that. Of course, in up north, Quan Tri. I never went up to Quan Tri. They finally took the Arvins were able to get Quan Tri back at a big cost.
The dust-off operations you're doing then, you're dusting off primarily then Arvin soldiers, or is it?
Well, before I arrived, the dust-off units, they were, the casualties were very high among the Arvins, and they had to go. I mean, they had to go under this really dangerous pickups, missions. Like, man, they took fire almost on some of them, almost on every mission. So so what happened that the United States Army decided that it was a time that the Vietnamese had to pick up their own soldiers. Okay, that didn't mean that we didn't give them support. If they needed our support to pick up Arvins, but really it was taking a toll on our soldiers. Okay, and another thing that I was told because when I was told by the coaches and medics, I got to meet a lot of them who had gone through a lot of bad missions. They had. And they were worn out, and they told me a lot of times they went on a mission to pick up the Arvin wounded. And a lot of the Arvin soldiers would jump on ship. They wanted to get away from the battle. They were like I said, their leadership was not the best. So I don't want to blame the soldiers themselves.
Yeah.
But they were in a bad situation. Boy, you got the stuff coming in to pick up the wounded. In this fighting going on, these guys want to get away. They start jumping on the helicopter. You know, they had to just throw him off. So it came to the point where they said, no, that's it, no more.
Wow.
You know, and they had, you know, and also a crew chief got, you know, the crew chief, every time he went out, see, a crew chief, they have a helicopter is assigned to you. Okay. So wherever that helicopter flies, you fly with that helicopter. You might have a medic, you might have a medic that's assigned to this to you for a period of time, but then you switch medics. But as far as pilots, you have pilots, different pilots every time. You know, they rotate. Okay.
Sure.
And so there was this crew chief. Every time he went out, he was getting shot at. He was beginning to lose his mind. Well, anyway, his last mission, he got shot on the legs, and that's it. He lost it. So you know, first of all, he was wounded. And they sent him home. They had to send him home because that's it. The war was over for him. Okay, he was getting short too.
But it's so, I mean, he was wounded, but it sounds like you're saying just kind of psychologically, he had come to the end of the road as well.
Yeah, you know, let me tell you, when you're in dustoff, okay, um, okay, let me go back to something because when I arrived to, before I get to that, when I arrived to Long Beach, you know, I thought I was, you know, I didn't always be a crew. Of course, I wanted to be a crew chief, but I was asking for too much. I mean, I was really asking for the best. What I was trained for, if you became a crew chief, that was the highest level. That's what you wanted to be, a crew chief, because you had crew members working on helicopters on the ground who never became crew chiefs. So they had to select you to become a crew chief. So I thought, well, I'm going to be working on the ground, you know, on helicopters, you know, on maintenance maybe for a month, maybe 2 months, whatever. Maybe I'll never be a crew chief. But anyway, within 2 weeks or less, I was there, and they said, you know, some of the crew chiefs were getting short, and they said, you know, they needed a couple of crew chiefs, so they came, you know, selected me and this other guy. The last, you know, we were fresh. And I said, my goodness, I said, like, I mean, I was like excited, and you know, and I really wanted the job, but I was also very afraid because I had no experience. I mean, experience, I say, like, you know, not that I was afraid to go on the mission, but I was in charge of a helicopter.
The responsibility.
I mean, I'm 19 years old. You know, I was out of school. You know, the training we get in school is very limited. You know, here okay, so now you got 15620. That was the tail number of my helicopter. Okay, now this is your assignment. You got to maintain this helicopter. You got to make sure this helicopter is ready for the mission. You know, every morning you have to get up really early, check everything, make sure when the mission comes, everything has to be ready. And I was, and for me, you know, so I was in the Vietnam for 2 weeks, and I'm a crew chief. You know, so I said, my goodness, you know, I was like, man, I was like shaking, you know, both out of joy and out of like, you know, like worried, you know, like. But anyway, so my first mission was a night mission. And of course, I was not, you know, there was a crew chief, a medic, and 2 pilots, you know, and I went for the ride just to get a feel for the mission. Now, the crew chief sits on the right of the helicopter in the back, okay, you know, and we sit on, and the crew chief and medic, they sit on the floor. There's no seats, you know, and the medic sits on the left side of the chopper, okay, and now the pilots, they have armor, and they have armor on their seats, on their sides, you know, all the way to their heads, and they have a chest armor too, okay. And so there, you know, they got a lot of. Now the crew chief and the medic, you know, we have a chicken plate. It's like a 2x4 plate, you know, and by an inch thick, and you place that on that sits on the floor. You know, it's covered with fabric, and you sit on that plate, and you also have an armor, you know, for your back and for your chest, and it's pretty thick. It's about an inch thick, and it's very heavy, and it's made of some kind of a fiber or whatever, but it's heavy and it's covered with fabric, you know, and you probably see in some of the pictures, but it's pretty heavy. But that's, you know, so you sit on the plate and try to keep as much as your legs within that plate, because that's going to protect you for small arms, arms, you know, not from anything, you know, not from a 51 caliber machine gun, you know. so I could fit myself like as much as I could into that plate, but anyway, that was the protection for the crew, because I mean helicopters are just so they're just thin. There's you have no protection, and one thing about helicopters, you can't hide behind a rock. You can't dig a hole and hide it. When you going in, I mean, there's no place to hide. That's it. The only place you can hide is behind the shield you got on in front of you, on your chest and your back and on your butt.
Sure.
But anyway, on the first mission, it was a night mission of all things, and then we had to deliver medical supplies to an Arvin fire base, and it was a moonless night. It was dark, very very dark, and all I could see was when we went through a base, the American bases, they had lights all around them. They were pitch dark in the middle, but they had through the perimeter you could see all the lighting, to see, they have towers, to see if anybody infiltrates. But anyway, so we reached the fire base, couldn't see anything, and we had to keep our lights off, because you don't want to let the enemy see you. So we keep our lights off, our navigating lights and all our lights off, until we get very close to where they are. They give you signals to let you know where they are. First in radio communication, you already know the coordinates where they are. But it's always, you might have the coordinates, but it's not always easy to pinpoint exactly where people are. And the pilots have to speak to the ground, and then the medic and the crew chief, we have to let them know what we see. But anyway, so once we approached the fire base, we turned the landing light on, and it lit up the whole. There was all these triangle small fire bases, and it lit up the whole fire base, and I could see, there was dust flying all over the place, and there was Arvin soldiers on the perimeter with their M60s, covering their eyes because of the dust, and I could see the reflection of the landing light on the dust. That was my first experience, and it was a night mission. So anyway, we delivered the supplies there, and we flew back, and after that, that was only one time. After that, I was a crew chief. So next time I flew, I was part of the crew.
Now, did these dust-off helos, did they have a door gunner?
No.
Okay.
No. We had when they said, dust-off helicopters, they had their unarmed. What they mean, there's no mounted M16 machine guns on them. But of course, we carry weapons ourselves.
Okay.
I mean, I carry an M16, the medic carry an X16. The pilots also carry they had a rifle next to their seats, and we all carry a 38 Colt with a holster.
In any of the operations that you were on, did you ever, use your M16 kind of as a door gunner?
Well, I use the M16, but shooting it really at nothing. We so we I know some of the other crew chiefs and medics, they were in a position where they actually, when they went in, and they actually even saw some of the enemy shooting at them, and they shot back. To me, when I used my M16, I was just shooting at trees and it really nothing. And
suppressing fire.
Yeah, suppressing fire. Yeah, because when we went to when we knew it was going to be a hot mission, what's called a hot mission, and it was known that that the enemy, the Viet Cong, was, I mean, there was it was in a very insecure area, and they were like surrounded by Viet Cong or NVA. Well, we had, then they assigned two Cobras. Two Cobra helicopters, so I can explain to you the one mission that I had with the Cobras. You want to hear about that mission?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I think this mission was somewhere in, let me see, I had been a crew chief for maybe a couple of months. Oh no, it was in October. So October the 12th. I even remember the day. October 12th. 1972, and we got a call that a convoy of Cambodian soldiers and in American special forces, they got ambushed. They got ambushed. So and they were under. There was a lot of activity, a lot of enemy fire. They had a lot of casualties. You know, both KIA and wounded. So I mean, we just got our M16, you know, and also with our pistols, and we ran to the helicopter, you know, and took off, you know, and the pilot was going at the maximum airspeed, you know. I think it was close to 120 knots. I mean, you could feel it. I mean, that when you're going fast, I mean, when the troops are going at the top speed, that helicopter shakes up and down. I mean, you can feel it like. So anyway, so we're flying there. We already know it's going to be hot. We already know there's enemy there. And of course, I'm thinking on the way to the mission, that's when you do the thinking. And I'm thinking, well, I wonder what's waiting for us there. And also the condition of the wounded. You know, I could never get used to the wounded, the condition, you know, to see people with bad wounds and pain, you know. So, I think we flew maybe half an hour, maybe less. Can't remember exactly the time. And so we arrived in the area before the Cobras. You know, so we started like going on, you know, on circles, and they were below. They were saying, I said, you guys, these people are dying. So you guys got it. These people are dying. So these people are dying. So we said, you know, and the pilots, they could communicate with the Cobras. We could see each other. So the AC said, no, we got to go down for these people. And we said, no, let's go. We didn't hesitate. None of us, the medic or the other pilot, we didn't hesitate. Let's just go down and get these people, you know. So as we were beginning to begin our descent, the Cobras were able to see us visually. So I mean, these things are fast. So they were flanking us within. I mean, they were right next to us within a minute or so. And of course, I mean, here we had a Cobra on the right side, a Cobra on the left side, escorting us. I mean, that was the first time. That was my first experience with that one. And here we are, you know. They were so close to us. I could see the pilots' heads, you know, and I could see them. I mean, they were like, and all three of us are coming down, you know, descending. And then as we're descending, then the Cobra on my right, you know, because, you know, there's no doors, there's no cargo doors. I'm sitting there and it's wide open. I can see this guy. Then he starts shooting his miniguns. Man, that thing starts rotating. I can see this you can't hear it, you know, because of the main rotor, you know, you can hear, but you can see all this like lasers, you know, shooting his and then I can see he starts shooting his rockets. And I could actually follow the rockets hitting the ground, exploding, you know, and that one. So, and I can see on the other side, he's also shooting, and then he banks to the right, but on my side he runs to the right and drops, and the other Cobra banks to the left and drops. So now what we do, so we get into this area and we started spiraling down. I mean, fast. And I tell you, this chopper is, you know, it's like almost like a 90 degree, and I'm there, you know, I'm sitting on the floor. You know, I do have a seat belt that you could sell, and here is space at the bottom. I mean, all I could see was just vegetation. I mean, because it's, you know, I can feel the centrifugal forces pulling me down hard with a heavy armor. I mean, you can really feel it just pulling you down in the main rotor. I mean, that chopper's coming down fast. The main rotor is cutting that air, and it's making such this loud clap. that it hurt my eardrums, and so we're dropping, and then once we get to treetop level, then we level off, because that's the best way to approach an LZ, because you don't want the enemy. I mean, that makes it difficult for the enemy to doesn't give you much time to shoot at you. I mean, we fly right above the trees. And so here we are, and then there's no more thinking at that point. Yeah, from the point that we started, like you said, there's no more thinking. So it's all just acting up, just reaction and instincts, and the adrenaline's very high. Not fear. Surprisingly, there's something about when you're going to save lives, that people are waiting for you to pull them out of a bad situation. That there's something about human nature that it's not the fear, it's the adrenaline you feel, and also for me, being 19 years old and being there and seeing the cobras and all that, there's a certain excitement about that too. I mean, it's like wow, this is the real thing. It's like, so there we are. So when we found the opening, we find it where the people were soldiers, and we landed. So we land, there's dust all over the place, and then we see two soldiers, American soldiers, running to a helicopter to my side, and they were, I mean, you could see it was chaotic. You could see soldiers running, and there's dust all over the place. And like I said, these two soldiers came, and they were saying something. I couldn't understand what they were saying, and they were screaming. And our main rotor is like making all this noise, and there's radio communication. And one thing that I did that you're not supposed to do, out of this, that you never supposed, when you go on a mission and you land, you get out the helicopter, you put your feet on the ground, and you stay with your intercom connected, and you stay in your helicopter, and the medic stays on his side. So when they bring the wounded, you bring him in, just pull him in. Okay, and once you pull him in, you got everything on, but then just get the hell out of there as quick as you can. But this time, for some reason, I don't know why, but somehow in my mind, I thought he needed my help, and I disconnected. I didn't say anything. I disconnected my intercom, and I started running with this American soldier. And so as I was running, then I could see the ground was littered with dead Cambodian soldiers. And then I saw this deuce and a half with a 50 caliber machine gun on top, and with a soldier manning the machine gun. And there was, and I noticed the throat was riddled with bullet holes. And so there I'm running, I'm jumping over dead soldiers, and I'm thinking, well, he's taking me against to the one who's wounded, and some of these soldiers, they look very, very young. So then we found this. We grabbed this wounded soldier, and we put him on the stretcher, and we start running back to the helicopter. Well, normally, like, we take stretchers and put them into the chopper like this. We never go out. And so what I did, instead of my standing in front and carrying the stretcher behind me, I grabbed the stretcher and I was running back, with my backwards. And boy, my legs were giving up. My legs were giving up. We were going so fast. Well, anyway, by the time I reached our helicopter, they already had it pretty packed with the wounded. And I could see the medic he was not happy, because I had left. And he was a very experienced medic. I think that he was on his third tour. He was a very experienced medic. He really knows his job better than anybody else, and he was not happy with me because he needed my help. But anyway, that's what I did. So I hooked up, and then the last thing, then it was filled with mostly Cambodian soldiers. They were, I remember there was one American, he looked like he was like in his middle 20s, but he looked scared. I mean, he was white. I could see like he had seen the devil himself, you know. And we had room for one more body, but of course we could not take the dead, but there was a dead American, so we had to take him. Okay, so they brought him in, and we put him in, and we, you know, they not with a stretcher, they put him in, so we had to put him right in front of me and the medic, you know, and the medic was treating the wounded, so and then we took off, like, you know, just took off like that, and we had some very badly wounded soldiers, you know, and there was one that had a bullet hole in his leg, and he was with a lot of pain. But there was one, you know, I guess the one that had picked up that I went to help the soldier to pick up. He was, I mean, he looked like he was been dipped in a bucket of blood, and then the medic asked him. He said, "No, he's gone. That's it. Nothing we can do for him." He tells the pilot, once we lose, when we lose patients, he lets the pilot, okay, we lost one, we lost another one, or I'm doing this. You know, they wouldn't know what's going on because they got to tell the hospital what we're bringing in as much as they can, so they're prepared. Well, anyway, we had like 3 layers of stretchers full, and the one in the middle was the one that was supposed to have been dead, and then I'm helping the medic, you know, with the IV bottle, whatever he tells me, you bandages, you know, do this. That's my job. You know, as a crew chief, I maintain, but once I'm in the air, either I'm a door gunner with an M16 or I'm helping the medic. You know, I don't know anything about first aid or whatever. I just do whatever the medic tells me to do. But anyway, so we're flying, and I know this guy was supposed to be dead, and he starts having convulsions, you know, so like, and I go like, oh, he's alive, you know, so he starts throwing up, and there's chunks as big as meatballs, you know, start throwing up all this stuff from us. You know, it's like, that was the stuff that really, like, I could never get used to him, because, you know, he apparently he blew his guts out, and he was just throwing up chunks of his inner parts, and I could see then the dead American, you know, I look at him, and he was, you know, right in front of me, and I see his face, you know, he had a hole in his front head right up of his side, had another hole in his stomach, you know, and he wasn't bleeding much, but I thought, you know, it's like on the way back, and I'm thinking, this young, I want to say kid, he was probably about 25 years. He was special forces. He was dead, and I started thinking, you know, boy, you know, like his parents, you know, like keep to my mind, you know, just one of those things, just keep to my mind. I'm thinking about his parents when they hear that his son is dead, you know, but anyway, that was just part of it, and so in going back, you know, we got to Saigon. We delivered them to Saigon. You know, they pulled them all out, and then flew back to Long Binh, and the helicopter was there was just blood all over the floor. We had to hose it down, and then that's when they told me, says, you know, they said, look, you know, guys, you know, the medic said, yeah, I'm sorry, you know, I was hard on you, you know, but, you know, I was just like, well, these people were coming in, you were not there, you know, and well, I went, you know, to help this guy, and one of the pilots told me, says, you know, look, I know you meant well, but look, if we would have been taking orders, we would have left you behind. He said, because we can't lose the whole aircraft for one guy. He says, yeah, no, and well, of course, I understood that. I understood that even before that. It's just something that I did from instinct, and which I never did again. You know.
Now these were Cambodian soldiers fighting inside South Vietnam, or had
Yeah,
you
they were from
fighting
like
in Cambodia?
from the Royal Cambodian Army, fighting like, yeah. Apparently, you know, first time the first time we started picking them up, I thought they were Arvins. I didn't know any better, you know. But I found out they were Cambodians, you know, because, you know, Cambodia, you know, they were still not under the Khmer Rouge, you know. They were still like, you know, they were fighting communists also in Cambodia, you know, the Khmer Rouge. So apparently they had sent some troops, you know, to South Vietnam.
So, when you're experiencing these things on the helo, I don't know if your mind ever went back to, when you were 17, when you were 16, 17, thinking, man, I want to get over to Vietnam and be in on that. Um, did your mind ever go back there and think, what was I thinking? Why am I here doing this?
No, what got in my mind that since you're watching Vietnam, like for so many years on television in all these images, and then finding yourself there. Like I found, for me, it was like after seeing all this, all these news about Vietnam, and you see they show the jungles, they show the helicopters, they show all this, and but you see it from you see it on your TV, but being there, it was like it's like it's so much surreal. For me, it was to say, I'm really here. It was like, am I really here? Boy, I'm really here. And but I learned very, very quickly that like I was kind of gung ho, like going there, gung ho, yeah, we're doing the right thing and all this, But I found very quick that how quick that goes away when you start seeing the reality of the war, and of course knowing that we're pulling the troops out, and and we're still losing people, and you really don't want to be the last American to die in Vietnam.
How late were you there? So you arrived in 72, and when did you leave Vietnam?
I left on March the 5th, 1973, after the when they signed the peace treaty.
I mean, so obviously, when you arrive, you know that things are winding down, and you're there. I mean, right at the end of it. Was that a powerful feeling that, one of us is going to be the last one to die over here, and I don't want it to
Absolutely,
be me.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, because the war was ending for us Americans, but not for the Vietnamese. Okay, and I knew that peace treaty was a sham from the. I mean, I knew that once we left, that Vietnam was going to collapse within 3 years. That's my thought, And the first of all, the NVA, the Viet Cong, they had superb leadership. These people really believe in their cause, and the South Vietnam, the government was very corrupt. Okay, very corrupt. They were intoxicated with all the money and supplies that we were providing them. I mean, they were like people who were in charge. They were taking advantage of all that we were giving them, because we were giving them. I mean, you can't even imagine the amount of material that was wasted over there. And but I don't want to blame the regular Vietnamese soldier, because they're the same people. They're the same. There's two things: different leadership and different costs. And well, they put the North and the Vietcong proved themselves. I mean, we gave them. We pounded
Oh,
the Viet Cong and the NVA. I mean, sometimes people say, "Oh, we should," I hear people say, "Oh, they didn't let us finish the job." Well, I don't know if you're aware that we dropped more bombs in Vietnam, South and North, twice as many bombs we dropped there than we did throughout the war against Japan and Germany.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you, just from what you picked up, I mean, you say that when you left Vietnam, you had no confidence that South Vietnam would be able to stand on its own. I mean, what did you pick up, or were you able to pick anything up from the armed forces that you saw as you're there? I mean, did were they even thinking about it? I mean, did they seem serious about wanting to win this war? Or I'm just kind of interested in whatever you picked up from what their mindset was. Well, the Americans are leaving, so we're going to lose, or I mean, what do you, just from your experience, what do you think they were thinking?
Well, okay, from my experience, as a 19-year-old, I turned 20 right before I left Vietnam, and what I could see and what I could figure out myself, of course, those in power, those who had the wealth, of course, they were the ones that they wanted to succeed in the war. Now, the average soldier, like, it was like I was talking to them. We were part, we were part of their fight. But just what I could see that that those you know those who were wealthy, those who were benefited from the uh, from the system in South Vietnam. Of course, those were the ones that they didn't want to lose the war. But of course, a lot of their sons didn't go to war. That was another thing. That you got the peasants and the commoners. Those were the ones that had to go and fight the war. And due to the lack of higher leadership, probably when you get to the lower leadership, once you get into the company level, maybe they probably had some decent lieutenants and captains. But once you get to the upper, that's when you start getting, the higher level, the more the corruption. Okay.
Right.
And of course they probably didn't get what they needed. And now, did they thought they were going to? I cannot see without American air power. I mean, think about this. They didn't have, the NVA, the Viet Cong, they had no air power. They had no helicopters. They had no Phantoms. They had no Chinooks to carry their troops. They had no B-52s, and they still they were winning the war. No, and that's when I knew that once we left, without our air power, I couldn't see them sustaining themselves. There was just there was just no way. And I told my friend, who's another crew chief, I said, I'll give him 2 years. And it was 2 years. I mean, I hit it right on the mark. 2 years, 1975, when they finally, yeah. Benoit got hit by rockets one morning. We were in Long Binh one morning, and all of a sudden we started hearing like incoming, and it was loud, very loud. I thought we were getting hit. I thought we were getting hit because it was just one after the other. It was a rocket attack, and then we came out running from our sleeping quarters, and we could see Benoit was very close to Long Binh, and we could see, man, there was like it was still night, and there was a low clouds, and you could see the explosions, reflections on the clouds, and they were taking a lot of rockets, and within 10 minutes we got a call, that they were wounded. So we did, and I was one of them. So we flew there, and we were there within minutes, and people were running around, but it was right after that, and we picked, and I remember we picked up 2 Marines who were with shrapnel. They were pretty badly wounded, and they were in a lot of pain. So we picked up 2 of them. There were a number of dead people, and I don't know all the details, but those are the things that I remember.
Sure.
I remember the rockets falling on the bay on Benoit. I remember landing there, watching the people running around, and when they brought in the 2 wounded Marines, and And that's as far as I remember on that one. I remember another one that a C-130 got shot down, and they called us, and I don't remember the way going there. I just remember landing there, and when we land, 'cause it was I remember when we got to the place, it was the C-130 was burning in the middle of all this vegetation. So we had to land a distance from the C-130 because we couldn't land close to it. And when we landed, there was an Air Force helicopter already parked there on that open area, and there was this strange looking, Air Force helicopter. They had two propellers. It's just a weird thing. That was the only time I saw one of those. And then I saw one airman coming out of the bushes with his AR-15, and said, "There's nothing we can do." So he went back to his helicopter, and then says, "Well," the AC says, "Well, we got to check it out." And I said, "Well, I'll go check it out." And he says, "No, I'll go with you." So we left one pilot, with the engine on, and so the AC, got his 38, and because it was pretty thick bush, you couldn't even see the airplane from there, and so he went on the front. I think I had my M16, and the medic was behind with his M16. So we were going through this bush. I mean, we were not infantry guys. This is the only time that I had this experience. I was going through the bush, like we could see from either side. It was, pretty tall grass, and so once we got where the C-130 was, there was a platoon of Army soldiers. They looked like they had been in the bush for a while. They looked pretty ragged, and they just looked at us, they had the M79s, M16, M16 machine gun, and they were just kind of looking at us. We didn't say nothing to them. First of all, when we were walking there, I told them, "So man, the enemy can get us so easy, and but anyway, nothing like that happened. But then there was the C-130 was there, like it looked like a sandwich, it must have just came down flat. And so we looked through the windshield, and one thing I did notice, there was like the scalp was hanging over the plexiglass flapping there. And then the AC looked inside the cockpit and says, "Nah, they're all gone." And I said, and the C-130 wasn't fire. So what I did, I walked behind the C-130, where there was a big opening, and it was just burning from the fuel, and it really was dead, burning in the back of it. So nothing we could do, So we just, went back to the chopper and took off. Yeah.
Now you said you saw the scalp.
Yeah, I mean, it was because apparently when the C-130 when he crashed, I'm sure they got a hit. When they got a hit, I'm sure he tried to control the plane, try to keep it afloat, as much as they could. But once he lost his lift, the plane came down flat on his belly. That's what it looked like. I mean, you could see the wings were there, but the plane was like sandwiched. And then, the windshield or plexiglass, it was cracked, and there was like somebody had scalped somebody's head. There was this piece of scalp just hanging on, flapping on the outside the windshield. And I thought, man, this is like, the AC, he went and looked in there. I tell you what, I wasn't too thrilled to look in there, but he looked and said, "No," I said, "They're all dead." But I did go to the back of the plane to see, any survivors in the back. But no, they were all burning in the back, and so we just left. We flew wherever we needed to fly. We just flew, and there was no questions about, with dustoff, you just go pick up the wounded, and you just do it. Doesn't matter the conditions, weather, night, day, terrain, you just do it. That was the one thing about dustoff, that yeah.
Where did you operate out of then? So July 72 to March 73. Um, were you flying out of different places or were you based in one place throughout that period?
Well, I was based in Long Binh, which it was north of Saigon, like 20 miles north, something like that. And when I arrived, the 57th Medical Detachment and the 159th became one unit. But there were two units. They had been separate at the time, but once I got there, they made it into a single unit. And so we had in Kanto in the Mekong Delta, we had a place there for two dustoff helicopters. So we would rotate. They would send a crew of 4 or 8 to stay in Kanto for 1 or 2 weeks. So we covered that area. The 57th covered the fourth, the third, in part of the second corps. The whole it was a wide area.
Did you, I just want to ask you this, did you pick up a difference? And this question is related to just different things I've heard from vets who served in different parts of sort of southern South Vietnam. And one of the things I've heard is that the Mekong Delta was kind of almost like a Wild West. Um, there were a lot of rules of engagement in other parts of Vietnam, and there were some rules of engagement in the Mekong, but the Mekong was just kind of a wilder, almost a free-for-all kind of fight. That's what I've heard from some of the helo pilots who worked down in the Mekong. Now this would be 69, 70, so it's a little bit before your time, but did you pick up any kind of difference in kind of what the war felt like between, say, Southern Two Corps and the Mekong?
No, not the only thing different was the terrain itself. You know, is the terrain itself. As far as the conduct of the war, we were thus we just pick up the wounded, and of course, we see, operations from the Hueys and the Cobra helicopters and like Phantom jets, and B-52 bombers. Yeah, most of the activity with the B-52s I noticed was like Tay Ninh, between Tay Ninh and Saigon north. That's what I witnessed. And but as far as being the Wild West, we never saw it in those terms. No. Now, somebody who was Cobra helicopter might know something that I don't know.
Sure, yeah. Now, in those months here in Vietnam, and you're experiencing these things and you're seeing all of this, I mean, while you're there, is it just kind of a daily process of not thinking about it and pushing it down just because, you've got tomorrow's a new set of missions, and so I'm just gonna, I can't bother thinking about all this stuff because I've got more missions coming up. Is that kind of how it was, that, you just kind of let this stuff go, and then it pops up in your mind later in life?
Yeah, I would say so. You think about when you return to a mission like those, and you return, you do think about it. It goes through your mind, But then you get more. But the thing is, one mission follows another mission, and as long as you have missions, you start thinking what you need to do for the next mission. Now, of course, then in the evening, you get together with the medics, the crew, some of the pilots, and you go back and party in your room and listen to rock and roll and kind of try to forget about it, and when it starts growing in you, it's like at the end when like, especially once they signed the peace treaty, and like, we're hardly doing any flying at all. And then it started getting to me in the sense that I started thinking about, that all this buildup was there, but I didn't think much about it. But now I'm thinking, it's just like, you got time to think. You got time to think. And we just waiting for the day that we had to leave. because we're dustoff, so we had to stay there until the very end. You know, as long as there's Americans in Vietnam, we got to stay there. So you know, now you got time to think. So we're waiting. We're not going to, you know, we have a mission here, but they're missions for somebody, you know, somebody's sick or somebody gets injured, and but then now there's time to think. And that's when I started getting a little concerned, you know, because I'm thinking like, how long? I mean, is this a real deal? I mean, is this a real peace treaty? I mean, you know, the thing is, these bases they look like ghost towns. There were no more soldiers. There were no more Americans. You know, I mean, they were empty. We lived in these barracks, and everywhere you walked, everywhere was gone. They were
So
all
I
gone.
mean, you were like, I mean, were you really right at the very tail end of U.S. troops getting out of Vietnam?
Um, okay, they sent me. They closed down Long Binh. Okay, so we were the last ones at Long Binh. Okay, they closed down Long Binh, and then they turned it over to the Arvins. And so then went to Tan Son Nhut. Okay, and then in Tan Son Nhut, okay, that was the last phase of it. And then they started phasing out. They were sending all the troops home. Okay, and we were waiting for them to release all the prisoners, all the POWs. Okay, and this is after January, when I like to say January, yeah. And we were waiting. We were even told that we were going to pick up some POWs. They had been, you know, they were like held somewhere in South Vietnam, some Viet Cong or whatever, you know. So we were waiting. They told us that we were going. We had a briefing. Okay, we're going to go to pick up some POWs, you know, and I think they said that we could take our weapons, but we'd just be very careful, you know, and so. But anyway, but it never happened. We never picked up any. It never happened, you know. So so then I was becoming concerned when okay, that's somewhere around like, I guess maybe February, yeah, late February, we finally got our orders to leave. You know, some of us, most of, you know, from that stuff, you know, because so they picked us up, they took us then to the airport in Tan Son Nhut. You know, they drove us to where the plane was. Well, anyway, they were somewhere there to stop us from going to take our plane. They says, no, you guys can't go home. You guys got to. And he says, what we're going home? Nope. I said, there's a problem about the release of prisoners. So they say, no, you got to stay. You guys have to stay. So we go back and say, what's the story? You know, and they said, well, no, because there's something, you know, there's a problem between Washington and Hanoi, whatever whatever was going on, but there was something about prisoners were not being released on time, some prisoners. So we had to, so they said, so you guys have to wait. So we thought, oh, that's terrific. So that means that we're here, you know, all the Americans are gone. And what happens if now Tan Son Nhut is wide open, and I'm going to be the last Americans to die in this place, you know? By that time, we just wanted to leave.
I mean,
so that was,
yeah. So you're among a very, 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 very small number of Americans still in the country.
Yes.
This time.
Yeah. So you know, of course they had Marines in the embassy, but all Americans had to leave, you know. And there was the you know, the ICCS, which is the International Control, let me say, the International Control Commission Supervision, and they were made up of Canadians, Hungarians, and Poles. They were there to just to, you know, not to control in any way the withdrawal, but they were there just to watch, to see, make sure that the United States did, you know, withdraw all its troops.
Right.
Okay. So I finally left on March the 5th. And they finally closed down Dustoff when the last American left on the 29th of March.
Wow.
So I left, yeah, March 5th. I left on March the 5th, but officially, everybody was going in my unit. Just a handful of people stay behind until the 29th of March.
I want to go back to when you're on the helo and you've got these wounded guys on the helo, and you're flying back to, you know, where they need to be, where the wounded guys need to be taken with. Are you busy doing other things related to the helo, or, I mean, sometimes do you interact with these wounded guys? I mean, I'm sure you can't talk to them, there's so much noise, but do you have memories of in any way interacting with these guys at all? You know, just even things like giving them water or just, any kind of interaction with them that you can remember?
Just eye contact, eye contact, like say, again, what, treated them, they're, a lot of them are in shock. A lot of them are so relieved. A lot of them are so relieved. They look so relieved to be pulled out of that hellhole. And they, they smile at you, and just like, some are just, some you can see they got their eyes and thoughts are deep, like they're somewhere else, you know, and some are just in pain. They're pain. They're just in pain. They're just like in bad pain. That's, and some are just like completely completely out. And some are just some of them don't show any emotion. They're just sitting there. That was my experience. But there was no conversation, no. And once we dropped them off, we never knew what happened to these people who lived, who died. Well, we knew the ones that were going to live, but the ones that were really badly wounded, we never found out if they survived or not. But it has lasted. I don't think there's a day in my life where I don't think about Vietnam. And most of all, the mission stays with me. Just the mission, the helicopter, the sound of the helicopter, just that. When I hear, I can hear a Huey miles away, and I recognize a Huey, like a signature, And when it gets closer, I go outside and I look at it and I hear the sound, and it just takes me back. And it's not all unpleasant, this is a hell of an experience. I lived an experience like all these other crew members, I'm sure they all feel more or less the same.
It sounds like, as terrible as a lot of these experiences were, it sounds like you're saying something that I've heard so many other combat vets say, that, as terrible as combat and what combat does, as terrible as that is, there's still something about that experience that later in life you look back and you miss. Is that true for you? There's something about that experience that you missed, and vets often say it's because there's an intensity, there's a focus, and there's an importance about the world of war that's just really hard to find in the civilian world.
It is. You have to be in it to really. You can watch a lot of movies, and there's some good movies, like Platoon. They really show the American side of the war. The feeling of the soldiers. You can really get. I mean, that's very, very, very. And of course, Oliver Stone was in the war himself. But anyway, do I miss it? I don't know. I don't miss it, but I'm glad I was part of it. I just, I don't want to take that away. I wanted someone to take that away from me, and I don't want to forget the memories of it either. Although sometimes, it's like sometimes just it can be overwhelming. Like I think too much of it, and I just dwell too much, and then it's just nice, kind of like I would just want to carry on. I have grandchildren. My wife had married for almost 50 years, and had to live life the way this planet has a lot of good things.
If someone asked your wife, how does Vietnam continue to shape who Isidro is, what do you think she would say?
Well, she knows that it's a big part, and she knows because she's woken up, especially the first 10 years of our marriage, I would wake up kicking, and, one time I grabbed her by the neck, I grabbed her by the neck, and I don't know why, I mean, it's like, and but I, kick and jump, and I had a lot of dreams, like I said, the first 10 years, they start winding down. Now, rarely do I have a dream now. But for a long time, I was dreaming in strange stuff, very, surrealistic dreams, but I was in Vietnam. That's why I wanted to go back to Vietnam. I always remember Vietnam when the war was going on, and it wasn't just ourselves, the Americans, but the Vietnamese people. By the time I was there, the Vietnamese people had been suffering for a long time, and I could see the destruction that had inflicted among the Vietnamese, and so after for years I said I need to go back. I need to go back, and so I finally, I told my wife I got to go back to Vietnam, and I said I need to go by myself. I said, so I did. I finally made the decision. This is in '96, and I wasn't sure, how I was going to be accepted, because after this, 23 years after the war, but I was hearing that things were getting a little better in Vietnam. They were coming, like the communist government was kind of like their collective farming had failed in a number of their economy had failed greatly. So they had younger leaders who were making decisions to allow the Vietnamese to really to have their own property, their own businesses. They lack some religion, and but anyway, some of those things that I'm telling you, I learned when I was there in Vietnam in 1996. So when I went by myself, I was thinking, how am I going to feel when I get there? I'm going by myself, no tour, just myself. I got a plane. I went and I stopped in Taiwan. Then from Taiwan, then I landed in Tan Son Nhut, in Tan Son Nhut, I think, and I was surprised they still had, anti-aircraft guns on the airport. It's an international airport, but they still had.
Yeah.
You could still see the hangars where the American fighters had been before, and I went through customs, and it was a typical communist going through, because I went to East Berlin in 1988. So they have I went to East Berlin, so I went through that process, that the way they check you out, in and out, and it was almost a replica of the way they went through the process in East Berlin. But anyway, I was I was just wondering, how I was going to be accepted as an American soldier going back to Vietnam. And what I found that in Saigon, which was now Ho Chi Minh City, I could see that things, they were still primitive, but there was peace, and the people were, everybody treated me very nice, especially those who had been ARVN soldiers. Now they were older, and they were very, very happy to see me going back there, and they were very friendly, and it was like we fought on the same side, and so that was nice, and from the moment that I was in the war and I came home, my memories were always Vietnam, the war, the memories, the mission, the people, the wounded, the parties with my friends. And so I had to go back to Vietnam to be able to see Vietnam in peace, which did help out a great deal, to be able to go back and see that, I guess Vietnam is not just war. And getting the welcome from these people was incredible. I took a train from Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon to Hanoi, 3-day train. So I wanted to see Vietnam from the train, so I bought a first class ticket, thinking I was going to have my own cabin. But when I found out there was shared with 3 other Vietnamese, I said, well, I wanted my own privacy, But they ended up, in 2 of them had been NVA soldiers. 2 of them. And I showed them my picture. I have a picture that I'm there next to that dustoff. I have a headband, and I had, with the kids there. And they were very nice. They didn't speak English, but there was a young girl who spoke English, and she was translating, and they thought it was, man, I said they were really happy that an American soldier, bothered himself to go back to Vietnam, and they were very, very nice, very welcoming, and we drink rice wine together, and they really show their hospitality, and it's a good feeling. It was a good feeling because that war was over. We were warriors fighting each other, that down, everybody has they have good hearts, I, I, I think I have a good heart, and we just happen to now be together and in peace, and they're enjoying 3 days, on that train. And that was an experience, to see Vietnam from the window of a train. And I met a bunch of people there on
Yeah.
the training. And once I got to Hanoi, I thought that Hanoi, I thought, man, these people, I wonder how they're gonna, because we bombed them. I mean, well, they were the enemy. But no, they were very friendly, they accept me, very friendly. So that was a good experience. So that healed something in me, because now and see the children, the Vietnamese children, and see them, they're living their lives with that. I mean, these people, they had a war for 30 years, since the French, in the China war. So not to see, they were too concerned about living their lives, probably we talk more about the Vietnam War than they did. They were concerned about making a living, now they, people could have their own businesses, people, they could reach their own goals, religion. I saw, the Virgin Mary in people's front yards,
Yeah.
so it's a Buddhist country, Buddhist temples all over the place, but they were they were becoming red capitalists, I've been to Vietnam 4 times after the war, and every time I went to Vietnam, I could see it was just getting more progress, and it was like, man, it's 100 times better, than it was when I was there, especially Saigon. When you see Saigon, the city that Saigon was during, during the war, it's any veteran who went to Saigon, they could see Saigon what it is now. I sat there looking at all this, all these buildings, and all, it's clean too, in Starbucks and malls and theaters, and the way people dressed, and you see nice cars, and everybody with their cell phone, and it's like, man, I sat there and I couldn't even believe it. I sat there right by that. There's this cathedral inside in you probably,
Central Saigon.
yeah.
Yeah.
I used to go there with my buddies, we because in Tanzania we could go off base, and we would take one of those tricycle, motorcycles, whatever you're doing. We would, go around and spend time with girls and go to restaurants, and but it was this, the smog and the noise and the smells and and of course barbed wire all over the place, and soldiers with rifles in bunkers, and now it's after all those years, and then you said that, on the same spot, and you said, man, this world, and here it is, we fought this war, so many people died, and we thought that if the North would take over South Vietnam, it was going to be the domino theory that all Southeast Asia was going to become communist. Well, we didn't understand the history of the area. They have centuries of differences, Cambodians and Vietnamese, China, and other friends. They trust us more than they do the Chinese. They want to be close to the United States because they don't trust China.
Right.
They're a threat to them.
Yeah.
And they show it.
How did those months in Vietnam change you? So July 72 to March 73, you are who you are when you arrive in July 72, but as you look back on it now, how are you different when you get on that plane and fly out of Tan Son, I'm assuming, in March of 73? How did those months in South Vietnam change you?
Big time. Yeah, big time. Like, when I arrived, I was very like I said, I was like obsessed to go to the war. I was obsessed to be in Vietnam, and believe me, I was a very proud crew chief. I mean, to me, to be a crew chief and to save lives, I mean, that was very meaningful. That was very powerful. That as a group, as a dustoff pilots and medic and crew chief, the courage of the pilots to get us into the place, and finding the place and going down there and landing in any condition, like, sometimes the weather was more frightening than the enemy. Thunderstorms, and at night you can't see anything in it. But it was a tight group. There was no hesitation. I remember that there was no hesitation. Nobody showed anything like. There was never who said, "Oh, like too afraid to go in." No, we were just do it. Where does it come from? I don't know where does it come from, but just like saving lives is for me. It was, to this day, it's not there's nothing that I'm so proud of more than having been a dustoff crew chief, because there are people today alive that are alive because we went there and got them out of these places. And so that was always being on that job. It was something that you can really feel good about.
Something's different, what do I call it? Something's different, what do I call it? I'm here, you're gone. I'm here, you're gone. Something's different, what do I call it? Something's different, what do I call it?